Hello and welcome to the Vision Veritas channel, a new channel dedicated to pointing out the lies, hypocrisy, and deception of the left that is just so prevalent nowadays. When you are force-fed a particular narrative and you know the opposite is true, it's not enough to stand on the sidelines anymore. It's time to stand up for what you know is right. It's time to stand up for the truth. If you ignore what you see around you, that deception will fester into a cancer, into a tumor. And when that happens, it's oftentimes too late to stop it. In today's day and age, to anyone of sound mind, truth is absolute. Truth isn't subject to one's own opinion. Truth doesn't end with an "it's your truth" or "it's my truth." To those of us who are firmly grounded in reality, acknowledge that there is right and wrong and thus absolutes. We recognize truth in and of itself is an absolute. While something indeed can change over time and render something that was truth now false, something that was fact as now fiction, that doesn't change the premise of what truth actually is. And it also doesn't give credence to one's own personal truth. This modern relationship between the left side of the spectrum and how truth is perceived is left up to one's own narrative. It's left up to whatever is necessary to peddle a specific ideal or ideals to further a specific agenda. We saw this as far back as the Clinton administration when the word lie was suddenly changed into the word spin.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
In a deposition in January, I was asked questions about my relationship with Monica Lewinsky. While my answers were legally accurate, I did not volunteer information. Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible. I misled people, including even my wife.
Instead of admitting something is false and there's an absolute truth counter to said falsehood, or something being pointed out as correct as now incorrect, suddenly the Clinton administration and the current media-forced propaganda operation began calling something we as free thinkers, as individuals grounded in something greater than an all-powerful government as truth, as now subject to one's own interpretation. Take a step back and think about how dangerous that is. With ideas such as your truth and my truth, with his truth or her truth now being accepted in modern-day society, suddenly a specific political group who owns the mainstream media, who owns the most popular means and methods of communication of how one consumes information, can now tailor the truth they perceive as relevant at a specific time and how you consume it. Those who have dissenting opinions are squashed. Those who have evidence to the contrary are considered science deniers. Those who speak out against a narrative that is being forced down the throats of every American citizen are suddenly silenced digitally because we have now ceded control of our lives to these devices we call cell phones. We carry them around all the time, myself included. It's to the point where realistically, one can't function in today's modern society without them, and they know this. There's a time that I can remember when I was younger that a computer was a computer based on local software you could get for it. The internet didn't really exist. It was in its very early infancy. It was for word processing, accounting, it was for crunching numbers, and it was for educational purposes and light gaming. Well, a far cry from what we consider gaming as of today. Nowadays, it's very different. A computer is essentially worthless to anyone unless it's connected to the internet, to the point where the terms are interchangeable. They used to be mutually exclusive entities, whereas now, any device is worthless without the ability to access all of the information that's tailor-made for you and how you're supposed to think. Major search engines tailor the results that you see. Social media platforms ban and silence anybody who dares speak out against the current narrative. And it's all predicated on the supposed safety and security of you, the everyday citizen, of John Q. Public, the consumer. and ultimately what truth you are being told, because remember, truth isn't absolute anymore. It's fluid unless it goes against the political narrative of the left that you're force-fed, and then it becomes absolute until they decide to change it again. Now, it's possible for someone to perceive something differently than someone else. It's possible for someone to gather a different opinion based on how one thinks regarding to the specific situation. But that's not someone's own personal truth. That's someone's opinion based on the available data to them. It's from that data that the truth can be derived. It's from that data that the truth, the absolute truth, is formed. And if it can't be formed based on available data, if the truth can't be determined, then more data needs to be acquired. More minds need to analyze the available data to come to a consensus on what the truth is. This isn't an individual truth based on everyone's differing opinion. This is simply data mining in order to come up with the best possible solution, the best possible answer based on the available facts and data in order to arrive at the truth, the absolute truth. Someone's opinion doesn't equate to someone's individual truth. Truth and opinion have never and will never be interchangeable.
District 196 schools are quickly becoming a place where promoting activism is actually more important than promoting education. I'll take you back to my first day at RHS this fall. The principal came out and gave us a heartfelt speech about equality and standing together. He began to list countless races, such as Latino, Asian, expressing how much they matter and how important they are. But never once did he mention a race or identity that reflects me, or half the kids that were in the class. Now, members of the board, I know you haven't been to school in a while, and I know none of you, or most of you, don't have any kids left in the school district. But you must admit how uncomfortable it will be to be characterized just by your skin color on the first day of school, and be thought that you were wrong just because of your skin color. To be clear, I don't need you to tell me that I matter, but hearing the condolences given to other races and leaving just one race out, inevitably you'll start to feel like you've done something wrong. There are political signs all over RHS about specific races that matter, specific sexual orientations that matter, and specific perspectives that matter. But when I questioned the RHS administration about how these signs were political, they told me that they were supporting human rights. So when I questioned why the equity statement couldn't represent all students, they told me that to even ask that question was outlandish and offensive. And when I asked why that was, they told me, quote, "Whites have a pretty good situation right now," unquote.
You aren't trusted to think for yourself anymore. You aren't trusted to teach your children anymore. You only have autonomy of anything when said autonomy aligns with a specific political perspective. I mean, did any of you actually think you would see the day where right is wrong, where something that is universally known as wrong is now peddled as correct?
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies.
Truth is now becoming a commodity. It's now a currency, a secret currency, that an all-powerful entity is doing everything it can to extinguish. While the phrase is quite cliche at this point, truth really is power. And with left peddling how everybody can have their own version of the truth and it be deemed correct based on one's own opinion, they have in fact taken absolute power over everybody who buys into what's being sold here.
Empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
Now, I know this doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. That man is a liar without conscience. We all know it. And the terrifying part is, the left is so blind from irrational hate simply because they were told to hate someone that they don't know fact from fiction anymore. They don't know the truth from a lie if it's staring right at them. You have ceded the power to critically think about everything. You have ceded the power of truth to a leftist political party hell-bent on ultimate control of your ability to think and reason. You have been taught what to think instead of how to think. You have been taught what to believe instead of how to critically deconstruct a situation and reconstruct it again to glean fact from it. You have been perpetually poisoned by what emotionally makes you feel good about yourself and society. Truth, real and absolute truth, is the only truth that actually exists. And right now, it's being forced to fade into but a dim memory. You and only you can take the steps to see the absolute truth. We are the Vision of Veritas channel. We seek the truth.